Hi, this is David Orlofsky. Welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you watch with our friends over at Torah Anytime, wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, as always, it's good to have you along. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and comment. Apparently, when you comment, that also pushes it up. We have a sponsor. It's sponsored for Refuah Shlema for Orach Hasidah Bas Rezel, Leah Rina. So we hope that everything should go well and that she should get better quickly and all good things. I don't always have this opportunity where I know the podcast is going to be coming out on a particular parsha and a particular situation. But since I know this is coming out on the 9 days, and the week of Parshas Devarim. And we know there are certain Parshios that are supposed to be ideally at particular times of the year, right? I mean, Ezra was matakein to read the Klolos in Vayikra, B'chukosai, before Shavuos, and to read Kisavo, and Tosfos adds Nitzavim before Rosh Hashanah. And those more or less tend to come out. Some years are a little different, etc. For the most part, that works out. And one of the things that are supposed to work out is Parshas Devarim. Parshas Devarim comes before Tisha B'Av. Now, a lot of different reasons for this. One is obviously it recounts the story of the Meraglim, which was the first Tisha B'Av. And as we know, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because of Lashon Hara and Elu Devarim. It's all about words and the power of words and how words can become Torah, or Chas v'Shalom, the opposite. They can be used for destruction. But there's another aspect of it that all of Sefer Devarim, to a certain extent, we have to understand this. Moshe Rabbeinu began saying Sefer Devarim Rosh Chodesh Shvat. He died on Zayin Adar. So it was about 5 weeks before he died, and it was a 5-week Musa Shmuz, a Teichocha, where he was giving reproof to Klal Yisrael at the end of his life. And from the different psukim and insights, of course, that Rashi shares with us, we get some idea about giving Teichacha. Now, giving Teichacha is a very difficult thing, because to be able to do it in a way that people are going to be able to hear it and be able to receive it is a very difficult task for almost anybody, even for the most talented people who are in this line of work. To give Teichacha in a way that is not going to have a negative effect, you have to really work very hard. Work hard to be able to get people to hear what you're saying. When I was younger, I thought that everybody wants to hear the truth. And the older I got, the more I realized it wasn't true. So people would come to me sometimes with problems, and I was able to see right away what the problem was. And I would tell them right away, here's the problem. And they would go, no, it's not. Sometimes they would say, I see why you think that, but no, that's not it. And they would come back to me, sometimes days later, sometimes years later. And they said, you were really right, but I wasn't ready to hear it. I was talking to Dr. Reinfeld once, who's a well-known psychologist here in Har Nof, and I said, look, I have this experience. You must have had this experience. Somebody comes into you, and within the first session, you know exactly what's wrong with them. But your rules are that you're not allowed to tell him. They have to figure it out for themselves. So what do? He goes, it's the hardest part of my job, waiting for people to be able to hear it. When I was teaching in seminary, a girl came to me and she says, I don't know what to do. I have a real problem. I said, what's the problem? She says, I love playing basketball. And I really need to play basketball. I need it for myself. And I can't play with girls because girls can't play. I can't play with Jewish boys. They don't know how to play either. So I would go down to the schoolyard, and the blacks and Hispanics would let me play because I was so good. And I would play with them, and I was really very good. Anyway, I came here to seminary, and somehow I mentioned it to one of the teachers, and they said, you're not allowed to do that. It's not senua to go out and play basketball with, these non-Jewish boys. So I said, but I really need to. They said, but you're not allowed to. So I asked another rabbi. He told me the same thing. So now I'm coming to you because I don't know what to do. And I said, it's a very hard question. I'm going to look into it. And from time to time over the years, she would come over to me and say, did you find an answer yet? I said, no, I'm speaking to this one. I'm looking into this. So one time there was another one of the teachers there, and they said, what's this hard question that you have to try to answer? And I told them. And they said, why is that a hard question? I said, because she can't hear the answer. She already went to 2 rabbis. They told her no. So for me to tell her no is no chachma. Understand? There's no trick to that. She's not going to listen. She's not ready to hear the answer. And that's where it comes from. My friend, Rabbi Frankel, who we had the schus of having on the podcast to speak about his relationship with Rabbi Moshe Feinstein and Rabbi Dovid Feinstein, and he put out a sefer of Rabbi Dovid Feinstein's Psukim. And he told me many years ago, he had gone to MTJ and he had gone to college. And years later, when he was already a Rav, someone showed him a copy of a speech that Rabbi Moshe Feinstein had given to the Pirchei Agudas Yisrael about not going to college. And he looks at this letter and says, it's a forgery. Rabbi Moshe never said this. And he runs to Rabbi Dovid with the letter and he says, you see what they're putting out in Rabbi Moshe's name? So he says, yeah, Rabbi Moshe said this. He says, Rabbi Moshe was against college? So he said, yeah. So he says, but we all went to college. Everybody in the yeshiva went to college. And Rabbi Dovid looked at him and said, Frankel, and if we would have told you not to go, would you have listened? So we understand that giving teichacha, it can't just be that I'm telling you what you're doing wrong. It has to be in a way that you're going to be makabel it, that you're going to hear it and possibly be able to act upon it. And it's very tricky to do. When I was teaching in Discovery, so there was this girl who mentioned to one of the madrichot that her mother had a conservative conversion. She says, oh, well, then, you're not really Jewish and you really have to get a real conversion. And the girl was really very upset. She was very upset. And so they sent it to me to talk to me for damage control. In some circles, I'm seen as being diplomatic. I know listeners to my show will find that surprising, but there are those occasions when I have bouts of apparent reasonableness. Anyway, so this girl comes and she's very upset. And I said, what are you upset about? She says, well, she said, I'm not Jewish. I said, do you think you're Jewish? She says, yes. I said, who cares what she thinks? If someone came over to me and told me I'm not Jewish, it wouldn't bother me because I know I'm Jewish. So if someone comes along and says, you should know you're not really a Jew and you have to convert, I wouldn't feel threatened by that at all because I'm comfortable in my Jewishness. If you're comfortable in your Jewishness, so then, don't let what anyone says bother you. She says, but it means that my conversion or my mother's conversion is not going to be accepted by everybody. I said, that's true. That's true. There are people who have certain standards of kashrus and other people who have higher standards of kashrus. So I don't have to think that what I'm doing is not kosher, but if I want those people to eat in my house, then I have to keep a higher level of kashrus, even though I think my level is fine. If I want them to eat in my house. Otherwise, I could say, I don't care if you eat in my house. I think it's kosher. So if you're comfortable with your Jewishness, that's okay. But if you want to have a conversion that everybody will think is acceptable. So then you can get an Orthodox conversion. But that really depends more on you, how you feel. I think she went on and got a conversion. I remember that. I'm terrible with ends of stories, but, in other words, she was willing to hear it. It was reasonable. It didn't threaten her. I had a girl whose parents were not religious. The father never went to synagogue. The mother on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur would go to the conservative synagogue. And it was a very large conservative synagogue with a cantor and 1,000 people and a microphone and, the whole 9 yards, mixed seating and, So this girl became observant through NCSY. And she started going to the Orthodox synagogue every Shabbos. And didn't really make a difference because her parents didn't go. But it started to come around to Rosh Hashanah. And her mother was so happy. She says, finally, I'll have someone to go to shul with me. Because, of course, your father doesn't go and your sister doesn't go. And now I have somebody I can go to shul with. She says to me, so how do I explain to her that I would never step foot in her synagogue because I think it's treif? I said, I wouldn't say that. I would say just the opposite. Don't tell her there's anything wrong with her synagogue. Tell her I want to go to the shul I usually go to because it's more comfortable for me there. I like it better. Not because there's anything wrong with yours. I don't want to listen to a cantor. In mine, the local people all lead the services. Yours, there's 1,000 people, who come only for the holidays. Here, it's 50 people who come every week and have a certain connection. It's smaller, it's warmer, I'm more comfortable. I don't like that service. I'm not making it about a halachic issue. I'm making it about choices. We like different music. I do my hair different than you. We buy different clothing. And I like a different type of a service. But don't make it into, that shul is treif and I wouldn't step foot there. So she did. The mother said, that sounds really nice. Maybe I'll come with you. Because I wasn't trying to attack the person's underlying being. I was trying to get them to see my point of view. And very often with teichacha, that is the key. Helping people see it from their point of view. I may have told this story in the past. But there was a makolet that opened up in Yerushalayim Friday night. It was open on Friday, obviously, and they would stay open after Shabbos already came in. And there were protests, there was complaints. It didn't make a difference. So Rabbi Levin, known from the story that was put out of him, the book at Tzaddik in Our Time, Rabbi Levin was beloved by everybody. And he comes before lich benching. He's all dressed ready for Shabbos. And he comes to the makolet. So, of course, everybody stands. The Rav is here, And the makolet says, Rebbe, can I get you anything? He says, no. He just stands. And after a while, he says, can I get you a chair? He says, sure. He gets a chair and he sits there. And it's lich benching. He says, Rebbe, it's candle lighting time. He says, it's okay. And it's sundown, shkia. Rebbe, it's sundown already. It's okay. He says, Rebbe, it says. It's already, the stars come out. It's already, later. It's okay. About an hour later, the foot traffic finally let up, and he starts closing up. And he says, Rebbe, what were you doing here? And he said, I heard there was somebody who was opening his makolet on Shabbos in Yerushalayim. And I said, I don't know. What's his nisayon? What is he going through? And I said, let me see for myself. And I wanted to see what was going on. And Taka, you have the market to yourself because everybody else is closed. And people who don't care that much about Shabbos, they have no place to go, and they're coming to you. And you're making a lot more money than you otherwise would if you were closed. And it must be a terrible nisayon for you to have to close on Shabbos. But Shabbos is Shabbos. He said, Rebbe, you're the only one who is willing to see it from my point of view. For you, I'll close. Because rather than me, it's a fascinating thing. There was a famous book called How to Win Friends and to Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And he says, people very often make the wrong approach to people. They explain to you why it's good for me if you do something. He says, you have to explain to them why it's good for them to do something. Somebody came to Moshe Shapiro and he says, my son doesn't want to be from, he doesn't want to keep anything. And he says, of course, if you want to take something away, you have to prove it to them. You can't just say you have to do it. You have to show them why it's better for them. What's in it for you? And people tell me this all the time. They just say, I have a kid, who's off the derech. And I try to explain, whatever I try to explain, they say, I've heard it all already. And I said, they're right. They have heard it all already. They have to see it. If they don't see it, they're not going to appreciate it. I'm sure I've told this story once upon a time. I was in the intro program at Ur Sameach, and this fellow walks in who's older than the average person. And after a few classes, it comes out that he's much more knowledgeable than the average person. So I finally say to him, okay, what's your story? There's obviously a story here. And he tells a really fascinating story. He comes from South Africa. His mother had gone to Beis Yaakov. His father was a Hell's Angel biker and a smuggler. Boy, would I like to meet that shadchan, what they were thinking. Anyways, this kid grows up, as you can imagine, somewhat confused. And he was sent to the local Jewish schools. And it was oppressive. He found it the opposite of warm and accepting. He found it oppressive. And he told one story. He says, we were little kids and it snowed. It almost never snowed in Johannesburg. We're all looking out the window, and the Rebbe says, anyone who looks out the window doesn't get to go outside and play in the snow during recess. He says, I couldn't help myself. I was looking at the snow. I was fascinated. And so when all the children went out, I couldn't go out and play in the snow. So those were his memories. Anyway, he gave it up, became a Hell's Angel. He says he's lucky he never got the tattoo because there's no leaving the Hell's Angels. Yeah, if you have their tattoo, and then if you leave, then they either cut it off or they bring you to the tattoo parlor and you have to black it over the whole thing, make it a black patch. And, he was living kind of wild. This is the story he tells me. Now, unbeknownst to him, there was a young rabbi came to Johannesburg, Gabriel Klatzko, and Or Sameach had a young shul that people were coming to, and he was the Rav of that. But he was what they call in modern language a kiruv monster. Yeah, he Rebecca told the story that he was once with him out in the middle of nowhere in South Africa, and he sees this group. He goes, let's go over and see if they're Jewish. And Rebecca's like, let's see if they don't kill us. And he goes over, he starts talking to them, he gets them involved, That's how he was, by everybody, Anyway, so he says to somebody, I want to reach the Jews that nobody is reaching. He says, okay, what do you mean? What's like the roughest part of town where the worst people are? He says, Rabbi, you don't want to go there. He goes, I want to go there. So he finds some bar where all the bikers hang out. And he walks in. He was a short little guy in a suit. And it's like one of those scenes from the Westerns, everybody's talking and laughing, and then the whole place goes silent. And like the piano plays like, dun, 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 dun. You hear a glass crash, And he comes in and he bangs on the counter and he says, "Drinks on me." Now, this is a way to get people to hear what you have to say. And I was like, "Yeah, I don't have any drinks." So the Jewish guys come over and said, "Rabbi, what are you doing here? This is not your part of town. You don't belong here." He's like, "I came here for you." He says, "For us? What do you want?" He says, "I want to have a shiur once a week." He says, "Rabbi, we don't go to a shiur." Yeah. He says, it's called a Jack Daniel's shiur. Yeah, I'll buy a bottle of Jack Daniel, and we have to finish it every week. He goes, "Rabbi, a shiur like that I'll go to." And he'd walk into this bar, and everyone got to know him after a while, and the Jewish guys would all come over, Jack Daniels, and he'd sit there, schmooze, and talk about life, And after a while, he says, "It's too noisy here. Let's move it to my house." Sure. Nice little quiet Jewish suburban neighborhood. And one night a week, all these bikers come up, all the motorcycles pull up to his house, and party, drink and party like this. Anyway, he was making an impact with people that nobody would ever think you could make an impact with. So Abi was not part of this. That's the fellow who came into my shiur Norseman. But one of the guys knew him. And he says to him, "Abi, you want to come in and join us? We have a shiur." He goes, "I don't go to a shiur." So he says, "Well, it's a Jack Daniel's shiur. We drink Jack Daniel's because I can buy my own whiskey." Yeah. So one of the guys says, "Rabbi, I have a friend, Abi, but he's not interested in coming." So he finds Abi. He was driving a tow truck. Now, he explained to me that in South Africa, tow truckers were like one step above muggers. It could be they were under muggers. They were like, considered not just low class, but like dangerous class, So he sees him. And he says to me, "Abi, I'm going to bring you back." He says, "Not me, Rabbi. I'm too far gone." And he says again, "Abi, I'm going to bring you back." That was the last he ever said about it. He says, over the next number of months, I experienced something I never felt in my life. I didn't feel it from my mother or my father or my grandmother or my rabbis or really anybody. Unconditional love. I could not be bad enough that he would stop loving me. He'd see me on Shabbos driving my tow truck. He'd reach up, because it was short, reach up the cab and give me a good Shabbos. He'd see me coming out of a treifa restaurant. He'd come over and give me a Shalom Aleichem. He said, nothing I did could get him to stop loving me. Eventually, I joined the Jack Daniel's shiur. I would come to his house for Shabbos. It was an eye-opening experience. He died at the age of 28. And it was very devastating. I was here at the funeral in Yerushalayim. When parents are maspid their son, that's always rough. It's always rough. And left behind a wife and children and brothers, and really, really difficult. And Abi says to me, after he died, I said to his widow, I said, "What do I do now?" He said, "Go to Israel. Go to Or Sameach." He goes, "Me?" He was on in years. He had already been in the South African army. He was fighting in the jungles. You know what I mean? He was a tow trucker. He was a Hell's Angel. He was like, I'm going to go to Or Sameach. He says, that's what God would have wanted you to do. And that's why he was sitting there walking into my shiur. Because somebody loved him unconditionally. So there's an art form to being able to give teichacha, and never forget the words of Groucho Marx, who said the most important thing is sincerity. Once you can fake that, the rest is easy. So the people know right away if you're real or not. They know. They can sense whether you really care about them or whether they're a project. I may have mentioned this in the past, but there is a particular force in the Kiruv movement that has wanted to professionalize Kiruv. And so they say, we'll give you money, but you have to produce X number of people. And they have to become from according to our timetable. By this amount of time, they have to start keeping Shabbos. By this amount of time, they have to start putting on film. By this amount of time, they have to this. Yeah. And somebody asked me about it. I said, yeah, that's called a cult. When I expect you to get religious according to my preset standards, you've destroyed everything. That's no longer me caring about you, trying to teach you. It's me trying to force you to take on a lifestyle in order for me to get the money, for me to continue my work. It's absolutely horrific. It's the worst thing that ever happened in the Kiruv movement. It should be denounced from the highest mountains. Not me, because who am I? I'm a little guy. But I've spoken to people in Kiruv, and they've just said the pressure to produce numbers and to pressure people is so antithetical to everything it stands for. When I was in NCSY, people asked me, why aren't you a cult? I said, because a cult, they have expectations. I have no expectations. I don't expect anybody to do anything. I strike up a relationship with a person because I find people interesting, and I develop a relationship with them, not because I expect anything from them. If they never become from, I'll maintain that relationship because I'm investing in a person, not in results for me. Because when that happens, you lose everything. So Toichacha is, it has to be clear that I care about you. And that's all I care about. And all of my efforts are what's going to be best for you. I've had situations when I was in NCSY with teenagers where they would ask me advice on certain issues. They're dating someone or whatever it is. And they would ask me, what do I do about this, do about that? And I would give them advice. And sometimes they would say, I thought you don't believe in teenagers dating. I said, I don't. He says, so why didn't you say anything? I said, because that's not the question you asked me. You didn't ask me, am I doing the right thing? You asked me, can you help me with the problem? I'll help you with the problem. That doesn't mean I approve. But you're in trouble. I'll try to help you out because I care about you. When you care about somebody, you look at it from their point of view. And the most successful thing you can do is to become that person and look at it from their point of view. But if you only look at, what you want, so you're not going to be so successful. So there were a few ideas in the parsha that I wanted to highlight. That's talking about Toichacha, as I mentioned, this final Mussar Shmuz of Moshe Rabbeinu, and just a few Rashis. I don't want to belabor it. So it says Moshe spoke to them, Pasuk Daled, Acharei Hakoisi, Oma Moshe, Emani Moichichem Kodem Sheyikonsu L'Ktzei Haaretz, Yomru Ma Lazeh Aleinu, Ma Heitev Lanu. Why is this guy giving us Musa? He never did anything for us. Enoba Ela Lekanter, Blum Soila. He's just looking for an excuse. He can't get us into Israel. He's going to say that's because it's your fault. And therefore he waits until they defeat Sichon and Og and take their land before he gives Toichacha. You always have to help people realize that they're good people. Mitzvah Gerera is mitzvah and Avera Gerera is Avera. So there's a lot of ways of understanding that. And I think one of them is psychological. When a person does a mitzvah, he feels good about himself. He feels like he's a tzaddik. And that inspires me to go on and do another mitzvah because I see myself as a good person. When I do an avera, I see myself as a bad person. I'm a Baal avera. You know this in parenting. You're never supposed to say you're a bad boy. Because the next time the kid does something wrong, and you say, why did you do that? And they said, because I'm bad. You told me I was bad, so I'm a bad boy, so I do bad things. If you're a good boy, how could a good boy do something like that? It's not consistent. So first you have to give people success. And the more successful people are, the more they're going to be in a position to hear what you have to say, because you're going to be reaching the goodness inside of them, the Tselem Elokim. And the more you look how great you are. You're too great to do something small like this. Remember Pesach Kron told his story that one of his kids, he had very frizzy hair and his kippah kept falling off. And I see him going around once without his kippah, and I got upset. And I said, and I stopped myself and I said, careful what you say. I looked at him and I said, what a tzaddik you are. How could a tzaddik like you go around without a kippah? He says, he never went without his kippah again. And when you can find that greatness in a person. So first give people success. Have people have success. Right, Berkowitz tells the story from the Medrash. The Medrash says that Avram Avinu had an eshel. He would invite people in, and he would give them to eat and to drink. And at the end, he would hand out the benches. And the people were like, well, I don't believe in God. He goes, I don't believe in God. Okay, so then we're going to have to give you a bill for your food. He says, well, I was a guest. He says, a guest thanks the host. He says, I'll thank you. I didn't make the fruit. Fruit came from the tree. I'll thank the tree. Tree came from the ground. I'll thank the ground. And the ground came out of a big blob of gases. So I'll thank the big blob of gases. Where did that come from? That's the Medrash. And Rabbi Berkowitz says the first thing you see is don't take advantage of somebody who's hungry and thirsty. Give them to eat, give them to drink before you begin a whole conversation about religion. Don't say, like other religions have done, we'll give you food if you accept our religion. Otherwise, we'll leave you to starve. Yeah. You don't take advantage of people. So first thing you do is you try to help somebody. You look for a situation you can help them. Then afterwards, once you're helping them with their physical needs, you can help them with their spiritual needs. So first, Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to teach them success. Another point Rashi makes. This is Pasuk Gimel. Vayihi ba'abayim shana ba'ashtei esrei chodesh be'echad l'chodesh. Malamed shelo hochichan ela samach lemisa. He waited till the end of his life to give them teichacha. Mimi lo amad miyakov. Shelo echiach hizbanav ela samach lemisa. In fact, it used to be until the time of Yaakov that nobody ever got sick and died. You would sneeze and die. That's why people would say, God bless you, or gesundheit, when someone sneezes, because that's it. That's how you used to die. Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. And he davened that he should get sick, so he knew when he was going to die, so he could call his children together to give him teichacha. Omar, what did Yaakov say? Ruvain b'ni, ani omer lecha mipnei ma lo hochachticha kol hashanim halalu. I'm going to talk to you about what you did by Ma'aseh Bilah. And if you're wondering why I didn't give you teichacha all these years, Kidei shelo tanicheni v'telech v'tidvach be'esav achi. I was afraid that you'd be embarrassed and run away to my brother Esav, because you'd be embarrassed to see me. It's like this: I'll tell you what you're doing wrong, and then I'll die. So you don't have to be embarrassed to look at me anymore. And waited mamish to the end. Moshe Rabbeinu said the same thing. I'll give it to Chach at the end, but not while I'm still alive, because I don't want him to be afraid of me and embarrassed to come over to me. Yaakov says to Shimon and Levi, why did you wipe out everybody in Shechem? Now they're all going to rise up against us. Now we're going to have to fight all these wars, and we're too weak. We're not strong enough to fight all these wars. And Shimon and Levi said, should we let our sister be treated this way? And Yaakov says nothing for decades, until he's on his deathbed and said, let's finish that conversation. Because parents have experienced this. There's no point in talking to somebody who's not listening. So if somebody has their earphones on, it doesn't matter how good the Musa Shmuz is, it's not going to go in. You have to get people who are willing to listen. If somebody comes to you and says, yeah, well, what about it? Says, okay, you're not ready to hear yet. Maybe that day will come. Frankel, if we would have told you, would you have listened? And so people look at situations and they say, okay, I may have to wait for the right time when a person is going to be receptive to hear the message I have to bring across. But if they don't have that, then what's the point? So Moshe Rabbeinu says, this is it. Imlo achshav emasai. I have no choice now. I'm going to give you my final words, and then I'm going to die. So think about what I'm telling you. There's another thing when it comes to Chacha. Rashi says right at the beginning, Be'evra Yardain b'midba ba'arava mul suf bein paran bein toifel v'loven chatzeres v'dei zahav. So Rashi says these are all hints to the different averis he was going to give them Musa for. Because you can't give it all at one time. It's what they call a kitchen sink argument. If I start arguing with you and I pull out everything that you've ever said and everything that you've ever done, it's impossible. So all you've done is destroy me. So you deal with one issue at a time. And you can't fight on 100 fronts. And for parents, this is one of the hardest things. Because you have to know when I don't say something. You can't criticize your kids about everything all the time. You'll have nothing but criticism. I remember there was a book that came out in the 80s called The 1 Minute Manager. It says the 1 Minute Manager has one side. Catch your employees doing things right. We catch people doing things wrong and we criticize them. But we don't look for opportunities to see where they do things right so that we can reward them. And that's the goal ultimately. The goal is to say, this is a good person. Look at all the good things you've done. And this is one issue that we need to deal with. Now, it could be there are 10 issues, but we're only going to deal with one issue. Can't deal with everything. There was a comedian, Don Knotts, and he used to do these conversations like Bob Newhart used to do, where he would have like a conversation with Keilu. He was talking to somebody. So he's doing a psychiatrist talking to this woman, and it turns out she has lots of problems, and all these different problems. He says, look, it's going to take us a very long time to work through all these issues. What do you mean you can't pay? You can't afford for the therapy? He says, well, okay. We'll deal with all of your problems, and we'll save the kleptomania for last. Right? That's where you go out and steal stuff. So we'll deal with the stealing at the end to make sure that you can pay your therapy bills. You can't deal with everything. It's just impossible. You can't hear about 20 different things. And that's why when a spouse will say to their spouse, you did this and this and this and this and this and this, and you always this and this and this and this, then forget about it. So, okay, so what's the point at this point? Yeah. If it's a man, he'll stop talking and become sullen. It's a woman, she'll say, so if you don't love me, why don't you just divorce me? He says, no, I'm just pointing out some issues. Yeah, I'm trying to be helpful. I'll give one more example and then we'll take some questions. But there's one that to me is a very, very powerful point. So after the Meraglim, they're told that they're going to be in the Midbar for 40 years. And they're all going to die out there. Perik Beis. And when that whole generation died out, then Hashem spoke to me. Says Rashi, but from the time of the Meraglim until that generation died out, Hashem never used the word v'yedaber ela v'yomer because he was upset. This is astounding because Rashi says in a number of places, v'yedaber is lashon kasha. V'yomer is always a lashon raka. Kosomar lebeis Yaakov v'saged lebnei Israel. Kosomar, that's say it to them softly. Yeah, Vayigash alav Yehuda, like he's coming to battle. V'yidaber, and he says, and let me speak. Dvarim koshim. V'yidaber is always a hard language. When Hashem was angry at them, he used a nice, soft language. He only used the harsh language when it was clear that he wasn't upset with them anymore, which is an unbelievable idea. You can only talk tough to people that you love. And people that you're upset with, you can't talk tough. Always speak very nicely and very softly because you're upset. Right? You don't speak out of anger. You always try to say it in a way that's going to be that people can hear. So people that you love, you can talk to them in a tough way because they're willing to listen, and they know that you care about them, and therefore they're willing to hear a tough message. And people who are not sure if you like them or not, you got to be very careful to say everything very nice and gentle. So these are a few insights because we're coming towards the end of days and we want to try to influence people to make changes in their lives. And it's only going to come about because of words of love and showing people their accomplishments and understanding where they're coming from and helping them to be able to be the best people they can be. And now we come to the question and answer portion of our program. By Benny Malik, what is your favorite food to break a fast on? This is a good question. I had a friend, I say friend, but I really mean mentor. I was growing up in North Merrick, Long Island, and I would walk to the Youngsville of North Belmore, which was 1.25 miles away. And there was a fellow there, Charlie Lipschitz, now it's Rabbi Charlie Lipschitz, who was an older fellow in Smicha and YU. He was walking from East Meadow, it was a much further walk. And he would give me idud and encouragement. And really, he was one of the forces that carried me through difficult times. And he said that he has a friend who used to say, as soon as the fast is over, he would have Schlivovitz, which is a sort of really rough alcohol. Take a shot right away, so your stomach knows we're back in the business. Rishadmi said, his parents were of that generation where, when you broke a fast, first you have a cup of tea. 15 minutes later, you can have one cookie. 10 minutes after that, you can have, half of a piece of cake. It's like, it takes 3 days till you're able to eat again, The minhag, when I was growing up, is after a fast, you would have milchiks. Now, coffee and cake. People break a fast on coffee and cake, that's for sure. Make yourself a cup of coffee, have a piece of cake. That's certainly the way that you would come out of a fast. Question is then, what about afterwards? So when I was growing up and in my home, they usually have milchiks. They have lasagna and onion soup and, all the popular 9 days foods and Shavuos foods that they would have. They would have milchiks. The idea being that milchiks is easier. I don't know that that's necessarily true because cheese is pretty heavy and all those carbs and stuff. So obviously the Suda after Yom Kippur, we have a Fleshka Suda. We have chicken soup and, with lakshin and we have a piece of chicken, etc. I happen to think that's actually a little easier to digest afterwards. So the answer is really, what do I eat after a fast? Whatever's there. But coffee and cake is di or gur. You have to start with that. By Anonymous, when did the issur of listening to recorded music during Sefira and the 3 weeks start? Recorded music wasn't available until 60 years ago. It started after there was recorded music. And like all things, it depends. Now you have to understand. The issur of having music during these times of year is because they're going to lead to rikud and simcha. Nobody listened to music unless it was a live band. So you would have a live band at a simcha, at a chasana, at something like this. You wouldn't just hire a minstrel to follow you around and say, listen, I got to work in the kitchen. Can you play music? So it just never worked that way. So it just wasn't available. So when recorded music came in, it was a discussion among the poskim. Some people said, music is music. And other people said, well, now that people have grown dependent on having music all the time, it's a different story. I heard from Dovid that he asked Rav Tuvi Goldstein, are you allowed to listen to recorded music during the Sefira? And he said no. And he said, what about, a woman who's doing housework and she, the music helps her get her work done? Yes. What about a bacher who's relaxing, bein hasidarim, and he wants to listen to music to relax? Yes. What about someone who's feeling down, etc., wants to listen to music to cheer up? Yes. And he goes through about 8 cases like this. And each one was yes. So at the end, he said, so who can't listen? He said, everybody else. But obviously, there's room to maneuver. Now, they came out with a cappella music. I didn't check this out, but I did hear that Rabbi Yosha was not happy with it because these people managed to make a cappella music that sounds exactly like music. So, what good does that do? Now, another caveat. A lot of it depends on the type of music. I.e., I know somebody who wanted to do a kumzitz with a guitar during the 9 days, and they asked, it was a Kiruv group, and they asked Rabbi Yosef, and he says, yeah, it's mutter. Because they're playing slow, sad songs. When you have these a cappella groups that are doing Asher Bara, you understand that's kind of self-defeating. You're playing wedding music. That's the ikr takana against music during this time is for that type of celebration. So I have heard the psak that if you're listening to slow music, Devekas music, certainly sad music, even if it has instrumentation, it's not a problem because it's not the kind of thing that you're going to get up and dance to, Yeah. Leifta It's not going to happen. You understand? So that's it. So who historically came up with the first Issur, I don't know, but obviously as new situations take place and people have to deal with it, so, there was machlekes at the beginning about electricity, whether it was the Eraisa, the Rabbanan, and what its nature was. So I can't tell you historically when, but those are the different ideas as far as I understand them. Why is Techiyas Hameisim one of the 13 Ikarim? Why is it so important? It's literally on the same list as to believe in God, the Torah is true, and Mashiach. When Adam and Chava were in Gan Eden, Hashem said to Adam, if you eat from the tree, you'll die. Let's make a quick calculation. That means if you don't eat from the tree, you won't die. Which means the normal existence is not to die. It's to live forever. If you believe that when we die, it's an end, then you're basically denying all of creation and the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up the world and the ultimate purpose. We are supposed to live. We are not supposed to die. Death is a bad thing. It wasn't supposed to happen. And so when the world goes back to the perfection, because Mashiach is one of those things, right? He's going to come and bring the world back to perfection. Then everyone has to come back and continue. Just because the Chafetz Chaim was born before Mashiach came and was attacking the world, that means he doesn't get a chance to continue his original mission? Doesn't make any sense. So therefore, Techiyas Hameisim means that you understand that we're coming back and there's an ultimate conclusion to events. If you deny Techiyas Hameisim and a life after death, then you're basically saying that this is it. There's just this life, and there's nothing beyond it. The Mesilas Yesharim, Perek Aleph says, nobody could believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world just for this world. Can't be. There has to be something greater and something more. So when you say Techiyas Hameisim, you understand it's basically the same thing as Olam Haba, because according to the Ramchal, what we call Olam Haba, he calls the Olam HaNeshamas. It's a big waiting room. The goal is Techiyas Hameisim. Then that's Olam Haba. That's where we come back into this world and complete the mission of Adam and Chava in a world that's Gan Eden the way it was originally supposed to be. Mitzvah Hashem, we should be zeicha to see it. And that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sponsor an episode. We will not be able to continue. I'm sorry. We had a Tekufa where we weren't putting out episodes. And, I like doing this, and I understand I'm not getting paid for it, but I can't actually pay to produce it. So if we don't have sponsors, then, you'll just have to settle for the past almost 6 years of podcasts that are already out there and other shiurim that I've given. And that's fine with me. There's plenty to watch, hours and hours of me. How much of this can anybody take? But we need sponsors. So you can sponsor an episode. You can sponsor a question and answer. You can sign up for one of our online shiurim. I made a suggestion of maybe doing a shiur on Pirkei Avos, and it got some interest. If anyone's also interested in that, you please write in. You can leave a comment, you can ask a question, and that's it till next time. I am Rabbi Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.